Previously, on No Life Arcade, it was discussed on how easy it is for victims to escape, how ridiculously long stun times against the family are, and even some quality of life improvements, such as Danny's ability to study objects and have them permanently highlighted, being completely useless, and perhaps a rework should be in order, such as the ability for victims to see these highlighted objects, such as toolboxes, or even family members who pass by these highlighted objects being highlighted for Danny, and even useless features such as the ability to help incapacitated victims, which literally does nothing, being updated so you can actually pick them up faster, and perhaps even allow them to be incapped again. But now that we've discussed everything that needs to change with the victims, it is time the family get some changes of their own. Alright, so let's go ahead and get right on into it. So, the topic of this video is going to be changes I believe would make the family's experience a lot more enjoyable for players, new and old. And for those of you who do not realize, the easier a time the family members have preventing victims from escaping, the more players who want to keep playing family. The more players on family, the shorter the victim queues. And one hand washes the other, and voila, now we have a game that doesn't feel dead because it takes like 5 minutes for victims to get in the lobby, or people DC in the lobby because they don't want to play against Connie and Danny, despite the fact that every time I see both of them together, nothing gets done. Whatever nonsense that gets people to dodge in the lobby to avoid penalties and whatnot. Who knows? Maybe we could finally get the backfield issue fixed, or just get so many people playing that the backfield is not an issue. But I feel like this intro into another intro is going on long enough. So let's go ahead and get into it because this is going to be a long video. So strap yourselves in for this one. So I'm going to keep into the theme of last video where I'm going to go over the abilities of the fan members and what needs to be changed on which characters, etc., followed by the attributes. And I'm really going to enjoy going into the attributes because there's one interesting thing about the family's attributes that definitely doesn't sync up with victims, and it's just another thing about how victim side of this game is. Now, first and foremost, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a family main. I do play way more family than I do victims, but you want to know why that's the case? Because victim queues are too long. Generally, the only time I really play victim, especially now that I've gone ahead and leveled up literally every perk on every single character on both sides, is if I have a friend. If I don't have a friend to play victim, I just don't do it. The queues aren't worth it, and honestly, the time with victim games goes either one or two ways. You either get a bunch of people who are all in sync, whether using mics or not, and you escape in minutes, or you get a terrible game where the victims all die in the basement, the Leatherface somehow, and etc. And then, you know, you're back to the lobby within 5 minutes. But getting straight on into it, when it comes to abilities, I'm going to be going straight into Leatherface here. Leatherface's ability tree definitely needs a rework. They already said months and months ago that they're going to rework Leatherface. We've seen some changes here and there, but not a full rework with all these changes all at once. So I'm going to assume there's still more work to be done into Leatherface. The first thing that they need to definitely do is look into his skill tree. First and foremost, the stall resistance needs to be base kit, either 10 or 20%, just some amount that prevents new players from just stalling every time they slam down an overhead, if they even could figure out how to do so. They also need to look into the left side of his ability tree here, in which it's harder for Leatherface to overheat his saw. This is kind of useless because the negative effect of what this does is it takes it longer for Leatherface to raise his chainsaw and perform an overhead sprint. So it kind of shoots itself in the foot there. So unless they could change it so it only slows down the overhead from making Leatherface overheat when it's actually charged and he's running around with the chainsaw over his head, I'd rather that be changed into something that makes it so he revs his chainsaw up faster. That way you can start overhead sprinting faster. The only negative with that change, however, is you have a risk of stalling out faster. So all those Leatherface mains who have muscle memory down on how long it takes to raise the saw or how to feather it might end up stalling more because they don't know how exactly they should be feathering the saw to, keep that saw raised but not overheat. Now, I might want to add another one of these base kit, whether it's the cooldown after you've overheated, or again one of these new updated versions of the ability for him not to overheat as fast. That way we can add two extra unique perks to Leatherface. As you know now, he only has the unique instant start level 3 ability, whereas the other two are just overinflated numbers from just the basic stuff for, again, stalling less. I'm sorry, not even stalling less, just overheating, really. Just less overheating and the cooldown from overheating. The changes I would suggest making when we added a well, two more level 3 perks to Leatherface would be one that allows him to break down barricades with his overhead. To balance this out, we could either make it so he always stalls after he breaks the barricade, or he just loses so much of his stall meter. Basically, if you were to swing at somebody after that overhead, he'd stall his stall. The only tricky part about doing something like this is what happens if he overheads someone going over a barricade. Would they kind of just instantly get out the animation, still like they do a DBD when you chainsaw them as they're vaulting, or would it maybe stun them for a split second? Regardless, I'm sure if Gunn would have decided to go ahead and make this as a perk, they'd be able to figure out exactly what to do with it. Now, lastly, for his other level 3 ability, this is a tricky one. I think that they should make one where on Leatherface stalls his saw, he can still attack. It's just that it greatly reduces the damage. Like I'm talking about, he does Sissy and Hitchhiker amounts of damage. The only other thing that could be suggested was a link perk that allowed Leatherface to barge victims when his chainsaw stalled, but since we have hands in the game with that ability, that kind of step on his toes, so I probably would put a pin in that one, and again, just go with the less damage when his chainsaw has overheated or is off or whatever. But now that we've gone over Leatherface here, I think that we can actually go ahead and move on to the next character here, and that's going to be Hitchhiker. Hitchhiker, I think he's fine for the most part. Only thing I do is make a few slight buffs to his ability trees. I know how often everyone wants to use Hitchhiker. The last thing we should do it is buffing him, so people want to use him even more. But regardless, fair is fair. I believe that the numbers for the damage that victims take when they step in his trap should be increased. For those who do not know, when you step in Hitchhiker's trap, it deals 15 damage. That's nothing. Not even Connie's going to be afraid of getting hurt by 15 damage from a trap. And the numbers that he has for the extra damage in his tree are so little, they're not going to make any difference whatsoever. I believe that the extra damage stuff in this tree increases about like 4 and 8 points of damage. So yeah, you get where I'm going with this. Not even doing 30 damage from stepping that trap from all of those is not worth putting on at all. And honestly, I'm guilty of using these for the longest time, not realizing what the damage numbers for Hitchhiker's traps were. So instead of me just going ahead and using this stuff to make him place his traps faster, I was using that, and just it just really hurts thinking about how many victims probably escaped because it took so long for me to put my traps down. But I learned my lesson the hard way. So moving on to his level 3 perk, that is going to be the blood traps, the ones that make it so he gains a certain amount of blood from victim stepping his trap. Across the board, you only get 25 blood from resetting or collecting a trap that a victim has stepped in. What I'd do is a bit of a rework to it. Instead, make it so that amount of blood you get scales based on how high your harvesting is. So, for example, by default, if you have, what is it, 22 harvesting on a Hitchhiker, you'd get 19 blood from a victim stepping in a trap, and then going all the way up to 50 harvesting, you get 30 blood from a victim stepping in a trap. This would make it so the higher your harvesting, the more blood you get, and ultimately just overall reward you a bit better for running a higher harvesting on, again, Hitchhiker. So I believe that just about covers everything on Hitchhiker. Oh, no, no, it doesn't actually. One more thing I want to change is the fact that I'd also want it so whenever victim steps in Hitchhiker's trap, he'd always see the aura for it. He wouldn't need to run his level 3 perk or dinner bell. I think that's a little awkward to have you have to run a perk or ability just to see what trap someone stepped in. You already get the scoring event and a voice line from stepping in a trap. How about we cut the middleman if you need to use family focus to identify what trap was stepped in out of the picture, just make things a lot less wonkier. So moving on to Cook, I wouldn't actually change anything about Cook's ability tree. I think it's just fine. The only thing I would actually change is victims crouch running. I feel like there almost is no reason to crouch run in this game as a victim, except maybe if you want to be a little harder to see and to move faster. One change I want to make for that is so when Cook is listening to a victim that is crouch running, he still can detect them. It just will take a little bit longer for him to do so. That way, instead of you having to literally creep around the map, especially with the last man standing, you don't want Cook to see you. You could crouch around for a little bit, stop, actually crouch to stop him from being able to fully listen on you and alert other family members to you or whatever. And then again, just keep going until you eventually can get stuff done without, again, that fear of always being spotted by Cook. Now, next up, we get into Sissy. Sissy's is a huge thing I do. I've honestly debated whether I should just do a full-on video about Sissy, but I know I had a video similar to this where I touched up on all the fixes and changes and whatnot that need to be done on the family, but not quite on this scale. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned a lot of things I'd want to do to Sissy, so I'll try to keep it brief on what those changes would be. But first and foremost, to her ability tree, I would delete both her ability to trap bone piles, toolboxes, and then electronics, and just add that to her base kit. And in return, I'd add in a new ability, which would make it so whenever Sissy poisons a victim, their stamina would slowly drain. This would be similar to what one of Virginia's level 3 abilities are. And since they're already so similar what their abilities are, I think that would be a reasonable new change we can add to her. And then finally, for the last ability in her tree, I would change it so that Sissy can once again mark out poison victims to family members. This was removed from the game. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it's been missing for quite some time. I can't even remember how long. It might have been since the Nancy House update. But being able to once again highlight victims for family would be great. Right now, the family members and Sissy at times can see the noise highlight for poison victims, but again, the full-on aura reading would be nice, especially as, in my opinion, and some other people's opinions too, Sissy is a support character. So the fact that, again, she is losing some aspects of her support kit out of the game for unknown reasons, it really kind of echoes why a lot of people call her and Nancy the worst family members in the game. But moving on to just some overall changes I want to make to Sissy. First and foremost, I said this a million times, they need to change the angle that you see victims when you're hiding in hiding spots. Having the same perspective as them as when they hide doesn't work at all. As you can see in this clip I have here, I'm hiding in a spot here. You can't see anything in front of you. You're basically going off of sound. And not to mention, there's already that loud noise of you being in a hiding spot that makes it harder for you to hear people. You're on a timer to be in that hiding spot. Like, never mind the fact if you AFK for like 5 minutes, the game would kick you, but you'll be forced out of hiding after about a minute of hiding in there by the game. So that's stupid. If you wanted to go camp the fuse box, stop, let's say, Connie from coming back to finish when she started at that fuse box, you're going to get kicked out constantly. And that's not to mention the fact that you could have a victim hiding near you while you do that anyway. It's not shown in this clip, but literally after I stopped that clip there, I start checking around the bushes. I got a voice line for Sissy, and then Julie's just sitting there watching me like an idiot jumping into a car trunk. And then what happens? She jumps up, chooses fight, stuns me, then jumps down a well, and now I look like an idiot. So stuff like that would really make Sissy feel a lot less clunkier. And I think what it really would be the linchpin that would make Sissy a lot. I mean, I can't say not meta. People still use her. It's just, the sweatier family members will want to DC when they see you using her instead of um, just the OGs and hands, of course. But anywho, the final change I'd make to Sissy is I'd make it so poisoning items does not consume any of her powders. This is already a perk that kind of helps with that, but I think just straight up making a base kit would be great. And then when we get onto the perks of this video, I'll go ahead and mention what I do with that perk instead of, again, it making you have a certain percentage of not consuming powders from, again, poisoning items. Oh, and sissy poisoning victims should also highlight them if they, let's say, pick up items like health and whatnot. I'm not sure why it only does noise, but it needs to straight up highlight them. That would make you actually poisoning batteries and other electronics actually useful. But going on to Johnny, I already made an entire video on reworks on Johnny, so I'm not gonna go crazy here. I'm just gonna kind of list them off real quick and then move on from here. So overall, I'm kind of satisfied with level three, Johnny's level three abilities and all that. I think they don't really need to change. I did again in my rework with Johnny mention what we could change him to, but I'm gonna skip out on that and instead say what I'd base kit like to see with Johnny. And it's just simply that I'd like to see it so that victims that are not crouching would still have their prints shown up or whatever by Johnny. However, once he finds your footprints, doesn't matter if you start crouching after or not, you will still get detected by Johnny. And literally, the only way to stop that would be for you to stun him or again wail or something so where he can't easily track you. I think that them making it so you can counter his power by crouching is already ridiculous. That's like if Cook heard you and you start crouching, your aura just immediately disappear. It's really ridiculous that they did something like that. It's just unnecessarily nerfs Johnny. He is a strong character with when it comes to his killing potential, but the literally only ability that he has being to track footprints, it feels really crappy for it to be so unreliable when you do find a victim's footprints, all you do is crouch. So I guess moving on, we'll go straight to Nancy. There's a lot I don't want to change with Nancy so much so that I'm definitely doing a video on Nancy sooner rather than later. I'm probably gonna do one on a full-on Leatherface rework video. 'Cause I feel like there's enough stuff that we can go into to make that a full-on video. But Nancy's definitely next. So I'm not gonna go too crazy. All I'm really gonna say here is that I want her Clear Eyes ability to be base kit and in its place it be replaced by the ability to show the aura if victims that you are currently spying go on to other family members. So, just to be clear, the moment Nancy is out of her power and she goes to her little stun, their aura will start to disappear. So, this way, since for some reason no one talks when they use Nancy, you at least are useful when using your ability to other family members. Um, and there are some changes I want to make to her barbed wire traps, mostly just quality of life changes such as it being overall faster to set them down and reset them because it takes her way too long right now to set her traps up. I don't know why they wanted to make it so long for her to set her traps up. So if they make it the same speed as Hitchhiker, maybe even look at some of her perks, make one of those increase the reload speed. I'm sorry, setting speed for traps. That'd be amazing. But besides that, I think we can go ahead and move on to hands. So hands is a complicated one as I record this video. They are looking at his cooldowns, although from what I've heard people talking about, they aren't nerfing his ripstall. They're actually buffing it so he can get it back even faster, which I find ridiculous. I don't know what game they're playing, but Hands is by far one of the most boring characters to play against on the victim side. Just the threat of him being able to constantly reset all your progress on an objective and just stop you from getting out completely is why he's so meta right now. So they really need to actually nerf that, not buff it. I'm not sure why they decided. For all things, his kid that needed to buff it was his cooldown. But going on to things that should be buffed, I could argue his setting speed for his traps could be increased, especially seeing as when you actually reset the trap that you placed down already, it literally does nothing. I feel like that can be changed, so it's more impactful. Same thing could probably honestly be done at Hitchhiker too. When you reset his trap that's like in place down, the setting speed stuff doesn't affect it. It's at least like 3 seconds, I think it is, for both their setting speeds. But before I start rambling on about that more, they need to look into his barge cooldown, whatever the heck that those two in the middle even do. Is just, I use both levels, and I still fail to see exactly what any of them do. It feels like they make no difference, and you kind of are forced to get one of those in order to pick one of his level 3 abilities. So, I mean, it'd be nice if the Force perk actually felt impactful. But getting onto its actual level 3 perks itself, first and foremost, we have the one where when he ripstalls an objective, he gets a damage boost. First of all, 10% damage does nothing on hands across the board. 10% damage doesn't help him kill anyone unless they're like maybe 20 toughness any faster than they already do. And then it only lasts for 30 seconds. I'm not sure in what scenario do you ripstall an objective and then actually manage to go ahead and start hitting someone. So they definitely need to first and foremost make that duration longer, but then they also have to make the damage go up to at least 15%. 15% is a breakpoint number on hands where you can actually take one less hit to kill a victim all across the board, no matter where your savagery is. Next up, we have the ability for hands to deal more damage with his barge. So this one I'm going to get back into a little later when I go over perks, but I'm just going to say that his level 3 ability 100% is not worth it. All it does is increase his damage on a barge by 4 ticks of damage, or about 8 if you have the Bruiser perk on, which increases barge damage. By itself, I wouldn't recommend using that at all. Like I said, 4 points of damage doesn't do anything. So if they were to go ahead and increase his base value for his barge, 'cause his base barge, for those who do not know, only does about 16 damage. They could maybe bump the numbers up this a little bit. It might just overall, just by the barge itself doing more damage, be a net buff for this perk, but either way, his bars used to do more damage. I feel like with the level 3 ability and Bruiser, his bar should do around 60-ish damage, give or take. That's a little under Leatherface's overhead attack without any damage perks, which for those who do not know, Leatherface does 80 points of damage from overhead base, no matter what your savagery is. Savagery does not affect the overhead. It's actually damage perks that affect the damage it does, so keep that in mind. And last but not least, for his level 3 perk, the one that everyone uses, the one where when he rip stalls, he adds an extra trap. That one should be changed. So instead of it being this stupid one-time use level 3 ability, I don't know why they went to this fad of giving everyone a level 3 ability with him and Maria that's like usable only once per game. But I make it so for that he can only have one ripstall trap up at a time. So again, not counting the 3 he starts with, but when he ripstalls an objective, let's say the generator, he'll have a trap on that. If Leland were to go and disarm that generator trap, then Hitchhiker chased him away. Meanwhile, Danny tampers the fuse box. Now, when Hands goes and ripstalls that fuse box, instead of the trap being a gen, because again, Leland got rid of it, he put a new trap up on the fuse box. And then again, if Virginia were to go disarm that trap so she could sabo the fuse box, like Hands could either again rearm the trap with a gen from ripstalling it, or he can go ahead and put another one back with a fuse box if he has to ripstall it again. So hopefully you guys get what I mean with that. And we can now move on to the next category, which is going to be perks. So there are quite a few unique perks on the family that, in my opinion, need to be changed. So going on to Leatherface, first and foremost, bringing home the bacon, that needs to be changed. They teased over and over again that they're going to be changing that, but I think a cool change they can do to it would be to make it so Leatherface has increased movement speed while he is carrying a victim. And for good measure, they can even make it so he has a certain period of time of immunity to stuns during it. This would be great for me because every time I seen the end cap a victim, it always seems to be in the basement, and then superhero Anna is always just sitting there hovering around, ready to stab me in the back. So I have to usually drop him, just execute him, chase her off. So that'd be great for him to change. Bloodlust feels like a good perk. And for those who do not know, Bloodlust is the one that makes it so you deal more damage to a victim after you threw one on a gallows. However, it's just so rare getting gallows, even though it's like 40% extra damage or whatever. It's just so hard getting it, you know. I don't know what could really buff that perk. Maybe they might be better off just making that a base kit thing for Leatherface and changing Bloodlust to something else, you know. But I don't know. I just feel just that they should do for Bloodlust. Now, moving on from his unique perks itself, because for the most part, I think the other two are fine. It's just they need to fix the bugs with Rough Cut. And two cycle charge would be useful if Leatherface's overhead already didn't give infinite stamina. But I'm going to kind of cover these two perks at once. That's going to be big swings and easily tuckered out. Both of these perks, strangely, they give Leatherface some sort of effect that revolves around stamina, but Leatherface doesn't use stamina for his attacks as stall resistant. So I feel like they could change big swings to affect his stall resistance that way. It's not just a free 15% damage perk on him and then easily tuck it out. Again, that working with stall resistance instead of stamina, that would then make it so although he is stall more often with his. I'm sorry. Oh, jeez. Because usually tuck it out makes it so you can, what is it, swing more off. See, now that's the complicated thing about easily tuck it out. 'Cause in theory, if it worked for making him stall less, that'd be good, but I guess it'd make it him charge his sub. Like it'd take him longer to get it out. Like from you, Raven. I don't know. I feel like I had something with easily tuckered out, but then I kind of lost it. But it basically does the same thing swinging for the fences does. Which, for those who do not know, it not only makes it so the fan members can swing more times and use less stamina, but in Leatherface, he doesn't stall as often from using it. So if they could find some way to make Easy Tucker out work on Leatherface, that'd be great. Especially seeing as it's on his right side of tree, which, for those who do not know, has like nothing but garbage perks. Basically, like you're memeing if you go to Leatherface's right side of the tree. So if they could go ahead and find out a way to again do something with that side of tree so it's more useful, that'd be great. I said it before and I'll say it again. Sip 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 should be changed to Freshest Best on Leatherface, and it should be moved over to be paired with Surgical because both Sip 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 and Fresh is Best are useless on its own. I don't know why they keep adding all these perks to people's trees and not letting them actually combo it like it can be done on Nancy. But besides that, only thing I'd really complain about, and this is a general complaint, is the fact that for some reason they're afraid to let you use confusing mechanic with rubber boots. I feel like those perks pair very well together, and it's like a very lost opportunity for you to not be able to pair those up. So you can have some synergy with those perks together. And also, this is a request for good old Slashing Cast, who I feel is like the heart of the TCM community. Give them back their Masterizer build. I don't know why they moved Tenderizer and Master Key away from poor Leatherface's middle tree. So moving on to Hitchhiker. Hitchhiker, for the most part, his perks are fun. Only thing I'd really do is change Scout so it's in a different location where it could be more centralized and paired with other sides of his tree. Because right now, if you want to use Scout on Hitchhiker, which let's be honest, he feels naked without it, you need to go to his left side of the tree, which forces him to use either Serrated, which makes him hit like a Mack truck, and it's overall very uh, oppressive to be chased by him when he has Serrated on, or you have Venom, which just makes it very punishing to run through his traps. And on certain maps, where let's say if you want to jump through the window, you have to deal with a trap. I'm pretty sure you get where I'm going. So having a little bit more variety in the build, so you don't expect to see Hitchhiker running one of those two builds, will be amazing. Besides that, only thing I'd really complain about Hitchhiker is just giving him more unique perks, because him just only having Wireframe and then Venom being his only unique perk, especially now with Wireframe being on Sissy, who will use it better. If you guys did notice, I have like B-roll footage of me using Wireframe without Scout on Hitchhiker, and I cannot chase, or rather can't catch Danny on this infinite down here on Nancy's house. I'm going to segue to this real quick. They need to seriously look at some of these maps. Never mind the fact there's way too many basements, like gas station, where if you don't have Leatherface or someone that can gap, you could just be put in a hostage situation. A lot of these maps force you to bring a second family member over to help them chase a victim. And if you have two family members on one victim and all four of them are still alive, I don't think I need to explain how bad it is for the family. So please look at these maps. It cut down on some of these strong loops that force you to jump a victim to deal with them. Because this is why victims have it so easy. Like, of course, as of record this video, grappling's bugged, and basically, unless you have like 50 strength, you're going to lose most of your grapples even when they don't have grip on. Again, there's just something needs to be done with some of these maps. But moving on to Cook, Cook I think is fine. Only thing I'd really do with him is I'd say revert that nerf they did on Prey Drive that made it so you had to fully zoom in on a victim in order to get that perk to activate. As I feel like it doesn't work very well when you have to fully focus on them. It like forces you to get the one level 3 ability where he zooms in quicker. And then security pins, that one would need to be nerfed just because of the fact that I said in the last video, they need to make it so it's harder for victims to pick through locks. Victims with 50 proficiency get through locks way too quick for it to force you to use a perk to toughen up those locks. And even when you do use these perks, it still allows you to get through locks pretty quickly. So again, with them already buffing the locks by base kit and then you having known escapes, how long security pins will need to be nerfed just because having the locks be up to like 130 or 40 something times harder to break would be ridiculous. Just again, to so I could get away from this topic. When I said reinforced locks, I don't mean the basement doors. I don't want it to be harder to get out the basement. I just want it to be harder for victims to get through critical doors that lead to, let's say, the gin and battering, etc. Again, if you want more of me going into detail on this topic, I recommend checking out my victim video on what changes I think need to be done, and then I went into it a bit more detail. But otherwise, from that, all I can really say is this is a general thing. Again, I don't know why they made it so only Cook can get the ultimate blood build, which is Universal Donor and Blood Banker, and then Siphon. Nancy used to be able to get it, but the way they changed her tree now, you can't pair that over with Universal Donor anymore. So I'd like for them to change that. And I'm not sure why Sissy could never do this build either, but they can maybe add more unique perks to Cook too, but I think that really is about it otherwise. So going on over to Sissy. Sissy has a similar problem to Nancy. And I guess I kind of cover Nancy's tree in tandem with Sissy's there. And that's just the fact that their trees don't like branch off into other paths good enough to give you a bit more diversity in the builds you can get. And just overall, besides the fact they don't get as many points as some of the other characters, there's just something that feels like this missing with their tree. Like it doesn't feel very satisfying exploring their tree at all, and it just feels very linear going through it. You either go like up for damage perks, right for endurance perks, or like left for like blood harvesting perks. So that's basically the way they function. That's about it. There's very few other ways you could cross the paths and again do any varieties and builds there. And at least with Nancy's case, all she has like 17 unique perks and like 10 of them are trash. So they need to really just look at some of these perks and just delete some of them. Because, for example, what's that one Nancy's perk? The stupid one that makes this, I think it's called Hurt 'em. Yeah, it's Hurt 'em. That one makes it so you do more damage with the traps, but her traps only do 5 points of damage. So what's like 60% of five? You know, like this is exactly what I meant by hitchhiker's traps needing to do more damage right there. The base value is so small that you need to give like 300% extra damage, some ridiculous looking number for it to actually be impactful there. And I feel like that's just a problem. But besides that, I believe I already mentioned it earlier with Sissy and reworks with her. So if they were to make it so Sissy doesn't consume powder from her ability, they need to change efficient herbalist to make it so, let's say, it gives her a random chance of not consuming powder when she blows it on a victim. So I feel like that's really about all they would need to do on that front. I also think they should maybe consider giving number one Cook bar should have point back. I'm sorry, battering ram back, and then Sissy give her battering ram because it's a little sexist that her and Nancy don't have battering ram. Like, way to not give the two girl characters the perks to make them barge doors down faster. I mean, they get barged to the point, but that's a grandpa perk. And then again, if they get barged to the point, why can't they get battering ram? So moving on to Johnny, as I kind of skipped him to go to Nancy. Johnny, he just really has the issue of him being able to use spring cleaning, and I guess Hitchhiker get that too. That perk needs to be changed so when Grandpa's level 0, aka inactive, they get a stamina bonus. Because him having to be asleep in the beginning of the game to get the stamina bonus is useless. I don't know who thought that would have been a good idea for a perk. And then they maybe should do something with rage and all warmed up. I don't know what, but those perks, for you, those who don't not know, they just make it so when you grapple and then hit victims, the ability that comes back sooner. I feel like that should be a perk that'd be amazing on Nancy, but it doesn't really do much on Jotty and Cook because they generally always have the abilities available to use, except when they stop it for that temporary cooldown. And I mentioned this back when they first reworked the perks, but Master Key, I think, still has some uses on Johnny. However, batting ram, I don't know who thought it was a good idea to give Johnny that, but unless they make it so the animation for barging is quicker with battering ram, it does literally nothing on Johnny, and it needs to be removed from his tree and replaced with something like Barroom Hero, which could then let Johnny recover from stuns faster. But besides that, I think that's it for all of them. We just move over to Hands. All I really do with Hands is get rid of his unique perk. I think it's called Short Fuse, which makes it so you reveal victims' highlights when they trigger one of your traps. That is exactly what Dinner Bell does for him. Except for some reason, unlike everybody else, when you use Dinner Bell, it doesn't mark the victims that ran into the hands traps. It only marks them for yourself. So they should change that so it works more along with those. And again, change Short Fuse to do something else like, geesh, I don't know, slow them down after they trigger a trap, or just as anything other than that. Also, I don't know how they haven't fixed slow hands. That perk literally doesn't work. When they trigger one of his traps, they do not have a reduced repair speed. I had the pleasure of testing out Alucard himself, and again, we confirmed that it does nothing. And then I already mentioned it earlier with Bruiser, that just needs to have the damage values on that increased. I think that and the slight increase in damage for his base barge would make Hands barge do a lot more damage. Overall, just be a bit more menacing. Oh, and give Nancy in the Hands exterior and grappler. I'm sorry, suffocating grip. I don't know why in the world they decided not to give the DLC characters of all people the best grandpa perks out there. It makes no sense. Like, come on now. So now that we're done with perks, we will then be going over into the next category here, and that's going to be objectives. I already touched up on it my last video with the generator, but the generator needs to have either the time to kick it off increased, or they need to just nerf choose fight, so it's impossible for you to be able to beat a family member at a close encounter and then kick off the gen. It's one thing if you stab them in the back and then kick off the gen. I feel like that's a bit more skill or using stealth to be able to pull something like that off, but having grapples previously be basically unwinnable and then you just pull that off, it's not a very good feeling for the family member. It makes you feel very helpless, which, let's face it, generally when you play the killer, you play it to feel powerful, to have control over the victims. They're not victims if they have control over you. So, if they could change that, that'd be amazing. Next up, we definitely got to talk about the battery. I don't know who in the world thought that the battery needs to be buffed so that it takes even less time to turn it off. But not only can you now be able to grapple a victim, I'm sorry, a family member, see? The family's so helpless, I call them victims sometimes. But you could grapple family member and then turn off the battery. Just like with sneak attack at a family member, you could stab them in the back and then turn the battery off. There is just like a number of cases with the battery where I or a victim are able to escape just because it's so fast for you to turn it off. I even have this game here with the cook where I am literally like marking a victim. It's kind of my fault. I thought that one of my teammates I was playing with would have been able to get to that battery in time to stop Virginia. But of course, since they were a little preoccupied with a different victim, by the time they got over there, it was too late. Well, I have literally Virginia like peeing from my cook ability, and you could just see her running towards the battery. I see her turn it off, and then the gate was already unlocked previously, so she just gets it's just like again, it's just a very terrible feeling seeing stuff like that go down. Like it just makes you feel helpless. There's nothing you can do to stop someone from escaping. And again, moments like that cannot be a thing in this game at all. If you want people to play the film members so cues with victims are shorter, it needs to feel better to play. So moving on from those two, which I think are the worst offenders for objectives, we go to fuse box. I mean, fuse box is no better. It's just way too easy to get the fuse box going. Never mind the fact that they just hand you a fuse right next to the fuse box on just about every map, but also it's just so little time to do the objective. In addition to certain variables where just flat out you get good RNG, and they like basically hand you certain puzzles, whether it's two colors that only available for you to put into the box, or it's just a simple math. It's just no wonder why there are videos of people in the first month the game came out escaping in less than 2 minutes about a fuse box on certain maps. So they need to have some logic into the fuse box where the fuse itself cannot spawn a certain distance from the box. And they just overall need to put the fuses in more high traffic areas so it's easier for the fan members to patrol those fuses without again having to go out of their way to see if anyone's grabbed one. And then in the case of the valve tank itself, that needs to have a cooldown before you can interact with the valve tank after it's been turned off by the family, much like the generator and battery do. So then that way you don't have to deal with the hostage situations of Leland and Anna stabbing you in the back with choose fight and just blowing all this time. Then you have objectives like in the mill where you have to go all the way upstairs sometimes to go over and turn those things off. It's just very time consuming. Although the valve tank is used as a distraction, it's very easy to bully a family member and get out when you're coordinated enough. And sure, coordination should be the key to victims escaping, but again, you really need to make it so some of these objectives aren't just a nightmare to deal with in a lot of these situations here. But with that being said, I think that is just about it for objectives. The last thing I'll touch up on before I end this video is I believe I just about went over everything I believe I needed to on this video, and it's already getting close to the 45-minute mark, so I don't want to have a 1 hour video here. And I'd say we just spawns. Spawns they need to look into. A lot of these spawns put the family so far into the map that it takes way too long to get into the map, like a minute plus, depending on your map. Like for example, Slaughterhouse here with Sissy. I spawned so deep into the map with the battery here. By the time I got out of the battery, granted I did grab blood, somebody already had broke into the facility and kicked the generator off. I'm not sure if you guys heard it powering off in the background, but again, I can confirm they definitely got that generator. And I'm sure you guys see, I'm pretty sure I used some videos early on, but I think it might have been even the case in the same video. They got the fuse box off before I can get out of the facility as Hitchhiker. Or when I went to go chase Daddy off the tank, it's just, is this exactly what I mean by some of these objectives being way too easy to do? It's just like you basically have to sit here and stare at the battery, generator, and fuse box, or you just have a risk of the victims getting out easy. You kind of have to leave the valve to defend for itself and pray no one takes a valve handle. I mean, I guess it is meant for you to interact that objective to scare them away from, one of those three objectives so you could actually make some progress on those. But again, and just having them outright be able to do the objective when you leave for just 20 seconds to chase someone away is exactly why these objectives needs to be harder to be done. So I don't want to go too crazy on spawn points, but basically the way I'd want them to look at some of these spawn points is just make it so if they're going to spawn a character out by an objective like the battery or generator, spawn them more towards the gates. That way, if you want to go in there and grab blood, trap toolboxes, etc., you can do that. But if you want to just get straight into the map, again, you're right by the gate. All you do is open it, lock it, and go out there. Now, there's a couple more things I want to touch up on. Then we'll end the video. I just kind of remember it. But first of all, it's going to be grappling. Now, when I say grappling, I don't necessarily mean the victims being able to win it easy. We already went over that a million times. But I'm talking about the wildly different stun times that each fan member has. There is nothing that mentions fan members all having different times they're stunned when they lose a grapple, but it's definitely a thing. For example, Hitchhiker and Hands, they both by far have the quickest recovery time when being grappled, to the point that if you don't run, choose, fight, there's basically almost no reason to grapple them ever, except if you really, really, really don't want them to hit you down a well. You can see right here, Hitchhiker's recovery time for that grapple is so quick. By the time I gapped and tried to climb a ladder, he's recovered and attacking me. I'll have to show you what else happens to that clip, but you know what happens. Then you have Johnny here without choose fight. He has a ridiculously long grapple. Look, I'm getting killed by Hitchhiker. He's still in the animation. Now he's choose fight stun. But again, that's just an example of how long his grapple is. Now, Sissy and Cook, their animations are a bit more reasonable. Sissy's a little strange because her animation for losing the grapple will allow victims to move the quickest out of everyone's, but she's actually herself stunned a fair bit of time, so you can still get a good distance away from her, even without running choose fight. And then Nancy, she's a strange middle ground between Johnny and Sissy and Cook, where it's kind of long, but it's not, I can beat you without choose fight and grab another bone pile right in your face while you're still stun long. So they really need to kind of look at these animations and get them more in line with each other. I personally feel like the shrimp attribute is broken, and that's why the stuns aren't quite right. As I believe that a hitchhiker hand stun should be the equivalent of, let's say, Connie with her 15 shrimp winning a grapple against someone, and then again, like the Cook Sissy stun time is more of a middle ground of around, let's say, 25, maybe 30 shrimp, and then Johnny's long stun is probably what getting stunned by someone with 50 shrimp should look like. But again, something seems to be bugged, and these values for the stuns are just kind of randomly set between each character. Again, that's just a theory. I don't know if that's for sure true, but it'd be nice if we get some sort of clarity on these things. And that's kind of why I'm glad grappling's bug right now. Maybe they'll do what they did with endurance and just look at the attribute itself and just completely rework it so we get it
Excuse me? The fuck was
fixed in,
that?
in a proper position. So our next thing I want to get into is going to be hit detection. They definitely need to look into the hit detection, not just on doors, but just period. Like you see right there, that was ridiculous. I don't know what I was swinging at there and how I missed Connie, but that needs to be changed. We also have the bugged voice lines. I don't know what they did to the game, but around the time they added hands to it, the family members and victims, they call each other out like above floors and whatnot. I kind of raised the clip volume here a little bit, so hopefully you guys heard, but when I go right back over to where I killed Julie, Hitchhiker's either going to go mention that he sees blood or he's going to start his chase voice lines. I'm pretty sure the devs didn't intend for you to call out a dead body as blood. That shouldn't be a call out at all. That's always been a call out since launch, but them starting chases with dead bodies, I'm 100% sure should not be a thing, and that was a newer bug that they have not fixed. I've reported that in, and they haven't done anything about it, but I'm hoping eventually, when this game doesn't have a million bugs in it, they could finally get around to fixing that. As a little minor complaint of mine is I feel like them starting chase with dead bodies also makes it so the family doesn't talk to each other as much. I haven't seen them talk more than once per game in a very long time. But more important matters is going to be Leland. Good old I used to be able to barge Leatherface at the start of the game, and that's why victims have a minute cooldown in the basement. Never mind the fact that Bone Power should probably be moved away from Leatherface so he doesn't get stabbed in his back, which, again, I put in a little caption earlier. They maybe should do, like, a stun immunity. But Leland's bars can override the stun immunity. If he stabs someone in the back and then another family member approaches him, if that family member is close enough, both of them can be barged. Again, that should not be the case, as it allows chain stuns to be brought back in the game, even though those have been out of the game for over a year now. So again, stuff that needs to be looked into here. But again, I think that is just about it for this video. So I thank you guys so much for putting through this. I wish I put this video out sooner, as again with the anniversary patch coming through and just destroying the way the game works. Somebody's nurse to victims and bumps to family seem a little unreasonable because some people could argue that the family's in a better spot now that you can just run grapple so easily thanks to it just being bugged or whatnot. But again, once they get a lot of stuff ironed out, I feel like we'll be back to where we were before, where the family has a harder time. And I know again they still do, as it still demands a certain comp for you to have easier games when you're playing against more coordinated victims. So again, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. And if you have any comments on what I said or any suggestions of your own, please. Half the reason why I like making videos like this is again so we can spark some comments down below in debates. And just again, get together and hopefully the devs can see videos like this and they can actually go ahead and fix it, as we have a content pass coming. So I mean, this game's not dead yet, but at the rate they're putting out updates and all the lackluster changes and whatnot, again, it is definitely burning me out from this game. And I love this game, I don't want to be burnt out from it because I enjoy it way more than DBD. And I could definitely say I've been finding myself playing DBD a lot more often just because this game's just been so rough playing, especially on victim side lately, that, it's taking my motivation from doing it a little bit. But again, this has been No Life here. And if you haven't already, get a life.